Okay, so we're going to start off by seeing these two like teenage boys who really don't have much to do. This is 450 years old, this story. And back then it wasn't like they had TV or even books to read. Like books weren't even something that you could get access to because they had to be like copied by hand usually, or like if they were printed, it was like a big stamp and it would be something that was like for the Bible, but not like for like a fun mystery book. So how I kind of think about the characters in this story that kind of help explain their actions is that they were so bored, they either loved or they hated, right? You either had time to love or to fight. And that was really all there was to do, right? You could sleep, I guess, but you waste your life away. You probably died by the age of 40 if you were lucky. So, you might as well live it up. And so these characters, you'll see they're kind of hot-headed. They're very hormonal, and that's because they're kind of bored. There's not much to do. And also they're 16, 17, 18. We won't meet Juliet for a bit. She's about to be 14. But these guys have testosterone flowing through them, and they're, like I said, there's nothing else to do. So we kind of break in on the scene, we break into their conversation, and they're talking about this drama that are between the two houses. Remember, there's the Montagues and the Capulets, and they hate each other. It's sort of like they're not royalty, so it's not like it's two warring countries. Can you sit up, please, if everyone should just be sitting up? It's more like two really rich families. Like imagine if like Jeff Bezos, like of Amazon, and like Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, imagine if they were like giant gangs, and it was like the Zuckerbergs and the Bezos, right? They still are governed under the law of the land, but they're so rich that they kind of, take over the town and they have a lot of power and sway. And so Samson and Gregory are of the Capulets, and there we break in on their conversation just saying like how much the Montagues pissed them off. Now, the first couple of jokes might not land, and you might be like, oh God, this is going to be a long book. But I swear you get more comfortable with it as you go along. And the first joke is like super outdated and not funny, but it gets funnier. Okay, so enter Samson and Gregory with swords and bucklers of the house of Capulet. Gregory, on my word, will not carry coals. No, for then we should be colliers. And we being collar will draw. Aye, and while you live, draw your neck out of the collar. So they're playing on the word collar, right? Carry coals, colliers, collar. And while it doesn't fully matter because it's not funny even when you do explain it, this is a great opportunity to show you how to use the left side of the book, right? If you're confused about a phrase, you go to the left, and if you look at line 1, carry coals. What does carry coals mean? What does carry coals mean?
To suffer humiliation patiently.
Very good. To suffer humiliation patiently. So then what you kind of have to go through is go back to the original line and go, Gregory, on my word, will not suffer humiliation patiently. And then you have to ask yourself, like, what's he talking about, right? Oh, he's saying, like, we're not going to let them, like, talk smack about us and, like, take it. We're not just going to, like, suffer this patiently. And then if that's what carry coals mean, Gregory then plays on that and says, no, for then we should be colliers, which if you looked on the left means carriers of coal. And if we be in collar, we'll draw, which means if we're angry, then we'll draw out our swords. But then he again plays on the word collar by saying, well, you should also draw your neck out of the collar, like the hangman's noose. Like, don't get in trouble. Again, 450 years ago, people would have been like, wordplay. Now we're like, please tell me the whole book's not like this. And it's not, I swear. And as a couple of you saw, there's some dirty jokes coming up, which I'll do my best to explain without blushing. Okay, so talking about fighting and stuff, Samson says, I strike quickly, being moved. And if you look at what moved means, it means provoked, right? He's like, I strike quickly, being provoked. And you know what? If someone pisses me off, I'm gonna strike super fast. Like they won't even see me coming, like the flash, right? And Gregory says, but thou art not quickly moved to strike. He's like, but no one's pissing you off right now. So what are you talking about? And he's like, you know who pisses me off? A dog of the house of Montague moves me. And he's like, that if I see them, I'm gonna get them. They're gonna move me for sure. They're gonna provoke me to fight. And Gregory pretends to be like a philosopher. He's like, to move is to stir, and to be valiant is to stand. Therefore, if thou art moved, thou runnest away. He's like, to fight back is to be brave, and the valiant fight back. Therefore, I predict if you're provoked, you're gonna run away. So they're just like giving each other a hard time. And then Samson, disagrees. He says, a dog of that house shall move me to stand. No, I'm not going to run away. Psh, you watch me. When I see someone with the Montagues, I'm going to fight with everything I have. And he says, a dog of that house shall move me to stand. I will take the wall of any man or maid of Montague. And what the wall means is, do you guys know what like awnings are? Like the things that are hang over like restaurants and stuff? Well, we might think it's for like rain or to keep the sun out of our eyes. But back in the 1700s, there wasn't trash service. And if you lived in the second story, you're not going to take the time to go downstairs and like find a nice tree to dump last night's stew in. So what do you do when you have your stew and it's 2 a.m.? You dump it out the window. What do you do with the bedpan that's in Grandpa's bed because he's too sick to get up to go to the outhouse? You dump it out the window. What about, the bath water? You dump it out the window. Don't dump out the baby along with it. So things would just cascade from the second stories of windows, and you really never knew what was going to come out of that window. If you got splashed with it, you hope it's stew. Oh God, I hope this brown stuff is stew. Please let it be stew. It's going to be the best case scenario. So they had awnings everywhere to protect you from getting splashed with stew or worse, right? So what you would do, I'm rhyming, I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. What you would do if you were like a polite guy and you were walking with your hot date down the street, you would take the wall, you would allow the lady to take the wall. And taking the wall means, she'll walk against the closest part of the wall so she can be like, oh, I don't want to get splashed on my pretty petticoat. And if you're a man, you're like, yeah, babe, you can have the wall. I got you. I'm gonna watch out for anything. Oh, no, watch out, right? So the guy is like, just like nowadays, and it's not so much here in America, but like in Mexico still, it's really impolite if you're a guy to let a girl walk on the street side of the street. Like if you're walking on the sidewalk, the man always walks on the outside where the curb is, and the woman always walks on the inside. And it's not something we do so much here in America as often, but whenever I have family who lives there, and I spent a lot of time of COVID there, and it's just the proper thing to do. It'd almost be like picking your nose if you didn't, like if you were a guy and you were like walking on the inside, if you took the wall, right, just like in English times, if you took the wall and let the girl just walk out in the open, shows the weaker of the vessels, right? So he's talking about how, you know what? If I see a Montague, I'm going to take the wall and I'm going to push them out so that they get nasty stuff on them. So he's like, haha, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to push them out. And so he says, a dog of that house shall move me to stand. I will take the wall of any man or maid of Montague. And Gregory says, well, that shows thee a weak slave, for the weakest goes to the wall, right? Saying that's what women do. You're going to, really? That's how you're going to get back at the Montagues? You're going to be like a woman and take the wall? Ah, good for you. Great. That's tough, I guess, right? So he's, giving him a hard time. And so he says, that shows thee a weak slave, for the weakest goes to the wall. And Samson says, 'tis true, and therefore women, being the weaker vessels, are ever thrust to the wall. Therefore, I will push Montague's men from the wall, and I will thrust his maids to the wall. Yup, that's what he meant. And Gregory's like, whoa. The quarrel is between our masters and us, their men. Like, yo, you're talking about thrusting the women up against the wall and pushing them in from the wall? Dang, guy, like, leave the women out of it, okay? The quarrel is between our masters and us, their men. Talking about thrusting their women, my gosh. And Samson says, 'tis all one. They're all the same to me. I will show myself a tyrant. When I have fought with the men, I will be civil with the maids. I will cut off their heads. And Gregory's like, wait, you just said you're going to be civil with them? Like, like civil, I'm going to be nice with them. And then you say you're going to cut off their heads? What? The heads of maids? And Samson says, I, the heads of maids, or their maiden heads. And maiden heads is their virginity. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to cut off the men's heads and I'm going to take the women's heads, maiden heads, virginity, right? No better way to get back at them, right? I'm going to sleep with all their girlfriends. And so he says, I, the heads of maids, or their maiden heads, take it in what sense thou wilt, right? So he's like, take that joke however you want. But then there's also the double meaning of like, take it in what sense thou wilt. So then Gregory says, yeah, they must take it in sense that feel it. And Samson says, me they shall feel, well, I'm able to stand. And 'tis known, I'm a pretty piece of flesh. So you can read into that however you want, right? And he's saying, yeah, they're going to take it however they want, because they're going to take it how I want. And they're going to feel it as long as I can stand. And 'tis known, I'm a pretty piece of flesh. And so then Gregory latches onto that and he says, 'tis well thou art not fish. If thou hadst been a poor John. So then he's like, yeah, a pretty piece of flesh, you're lucky you're not a fish. If you were a fish, you'd be one of those itty bitty tiny little poor John fishies that they throw back because nobody wants them because they're so tiny. As much as I can explain. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you're not quite there yet, you know? And so then, playing off that, he says, draw thy tool. Here comes the house of Montagues. And Samson says, my naked weapon is out. Quarrel, I will back thee. So now they're talking about their sword, right? So now he's saying, like, making that joke of like, oh, you wanted them to, you said you wanted to fight? Draw thy tool, get ready, they're here. And so then he takes out his sword, right? He like unsheaths his sword, like, right? And so then the sword is naked because it's not covered, but obviously there's the double entendre. And this would be super raunchy and people would be like, ooh, and like throwing stuff in the crowd and, you know, it would be crazy. Draw thy tool. Here comes the house of Montagues. My naked weapon is out. Quarrel, I will back thee. So he's like, I'm going to back you up. And Gregory says, how? Turn thy back and run? Like, how are you going to back me up? Because I'm going to see your back when you're running away because you're so cowardly? Good luck, right? And Samson's like, no, I got this. Fear me not. And Gregory's like, no, Mary, I fear thee. No, I do fear you. I'm a little afraid. And then before they start the fight, Samson has an idea. Because the Montagues, the Capulets, they've been fighting for a long time. Remember in the prologue, it was from ancient grudge, break to new mutiny, right? There was an old argument, and now there's a new argument, right? And if you weren't here last class, then just basically the Capulets and the Montagues, they've been fighting for decades, right? They've been fighting since the Lord and the Lady were just teenagers. But now the Lord and the Lady, they're hell of old. They're like not trying to fight anymore. They just want to like eat their ferret and pheasant and just go on their way. And now it's the younger generation. Juliet, Tybalt, Romeo, Benvolio, Samson, Gregory, Abram. Those are the people that are now having to take on that grudge. So in the prologue where it says two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge, break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. So it's like the friends are having to fight friends, and it's all because of this ancient grudge. So he wants to fight because remember, there wasn't much else to do. There wasn't like you could go read a book. So it's either you're kind of like making love or you're making fights. And that was really, when you were a teenage boy, all you wanted to do, right? Or eating, I guess, or sleeping. I guess you had to go to the bathroom at some point. But other than that, you know, causing drama is what these boys just want to do. Hot-headed, hormonal, full of testosterone. So Samson has an idea. He says, let us take the law of our sides. Let them begin. So he's like, let us do something that will make it so that we don't get in trouble for, oh my God, try to fix it and make it worse. Okay. He said, let us take the law of our sides. Let them begin. You know what? I don't want to get in trouble for fighting, so we got to make this look like self-defense, okay? So we gotta make them begin, okay? So make sure you're following along. You should be on page 11, line 40, okay? Line 40, and the lines on the side, the little tiny numbers, those are the lines. That's going to always help you kind of get, and I'm really sorry for those of you who don't have books. Miss Beltran's figuring that out. I don't see how a whole school runs out of books, but you know. Okay, it's not like we've been reading this book for like 50 years. Okay, so he says, here's what I'm going to do. I will frown as I pass by and let them take it as they list. He's like, here's my plan. I'm a frown. I'm a mug 'em. And let them take it how they want, right? And so that's his plan, right? I'm gonna look at them funny, right? I'm gonna glare at them, let them take it as they list. And then Gregory's like, Samson's getting excited. He's like, yeah, nay, as they dare, I will bite my thumb at them, which is a disgrace to them if they bear it. And so biting your thumb was kind of like giving like the middle finger, like, oh, I'm just gonna go bite my thumb. You guys think I'm giving you the middle finger? I'm not. You're number one. Fatima, you missed my joke. I was like pretending it's the middle finger. So biting, she's like, I wouldn't have thought it was funny even if I was paying attention. So, So biting your thumb back then, it was like flipping someone off, right? And so he has a plan. You're just gonna mug him. Look at him all funny. Like that, how gangsters do. And then the other guy, he's gonna bite his thumb. And I guess he's just gonna keep his thumb in his mouth or just keep biting it repeatedly. Okay, so that's their big plan, to get the other side to start the fight. Let's see if it works. I will frown as I pass by and let them take it as they list. Nay, as they dare. I will bite my thumb at them, which is a disgrace to them if they bear it. And then Abram, from the house of Montague, says, do you bite your thumb at us, sir? And Samson says, I do bite my thumb, sir. And Abram says, do you bite your thumb at us, sir? And it's kind of funny that they're calling each other sir, because obviously they're not being polite, right? It's kind of like how if you're like, you got a problem, buddy? You got a problem, pal? What's up, chief? What's up, bro? Want to take this outside, friend? Right? But it's not actually a sign of, respect, but being sarcastic, but kind of trying to keep that air of politeness, civility, right? Where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. So Abram's saying, you bite your thumb at us? Are you biting your thumb at us? And Gregory, or Samson, he's not really sure how to answer that question, because remember, the plan is to have them start the fight. And he's like, is the law on our side if I say I? Like, wait, if I say, yeah, I am biting my thumb at you, like, is it still them starting the fight? Or is the law on our side? And Gregory's like, no, it's not. So don't say you're biting your thumb at them. So Samson says, no, sir. I do not bite my thumb at you, sir. But I do bite my thumb, sir. So it's kind of like if you're flipping someone off, pretend this is my middle finger, right? And, if you're talking to a teacher or some, oh yeah, no, I'm not flipping you off. Oh, you think I'm flipping you off? That's crazy. No, I'm just, just chilling. Itchy eyebrows. My eyebrow's itchy today, right? So it's like, are you flipping me off? No, I am. Oh my gosh, my middle finger is out. But it's not at you. No, sir, right? So it's like he's pretending to be civil and like polite, but actually, they're trying to instigate each other. And the funny thing is, if you watch, at the end of this, the whole point was that Samson and Gregory was going to get them to have the other side to start the fight. And at the end, they're so full of testosterone that they end up starting the fight anyway. So their whole plan doesn't even work. Because if you follow what they're saying, ultimately Samson's the one who starts it in the end. So he had this whole plan, right? And then he couldn't even keep it in his pants. He was just like, oh, okay, let's do some fighting. It's just really funny. Typical teenagers, right? And that's the cool thing about this book. It's all about it's all teenagers acting like teenagers. And, when you're young, your prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed, your brain straight up. Fatima, stay awake. I know, it's so hard. Your prefrontal cortex isn't, fully developed. And so you're kind of making decisions based on impulses. And a lot of it has to do with hormones, right? A lot of it has to do with who your body wants to biologically procreate with. And you'll see how that becomes an issue, how everything is really hormone driven. And that's why my 5th grade teacher, shout out to Mr. Caceres, he would always say whenever we were doing anything crazy, he'd be like, oh, raging hormones, raging hormones, raging hormones. Because really it is, hormone based. Okay, so these hot-headed people are, talking to each other, trying to start shit, talkie mushrooms. And then he says, no, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I do bite my thumb, sir. And Gregory says, do you quarrel, sir? Quarrel, sir? No, sir. And Samson says, but if you do, sir, I am for you. I serve as good a man as you. And Abram goes, no better? And that's like the worst smack talk ever, right? You want to fight? You want to fight? Okay, well, if you want to fight, I'm just as good at fighting as you are. And Abram's like, no better? That's your best smack talk, is that we're equally matched. Like, in your wildest smack talk, you're just as good at fighting as I am. Great smack talk. So he's like, no better? And Samson's like, well, sir. He's not really sure. This is his first smack talk, hoedown. And he's not really sure what to say. And Gregory whispers to Samson, say better. Oh my God, like, do I have to tell you how to do everything? Say you're better at fighting, it's kind of like if you were saying like, oh, you want to like do jujitsu? I bet I can do jujitsu just as good as you. No better? Say better. Better. And now it's like a little too late, right? So he's like, so Gregory's like, say better. Here comes one of my master's kinsmen. And Samson's like, yes, better. Sir, because he remembers that we're doing that. And Abram says, you lie. And Samson, because he's so brash, that sets him off. And remember, he wanted the other side to start. But then he's like, Abram says, you lie. And he's like, well, draw if you be men. Gregory, remember thy washing blow. And then they all start fighting, okay? And then, so they're all fighting, and these are all just like low level, like cronies, like, people like the low levels. They're not even on the board. We don't even need to name them. You don't have to remember their names. But you'll see that Benvolio is Romeo's cousin. And Romeo, he's like the prize son of the Montagues. Benvolio's like his second, he's like the, second in command, sort of. He's his cousin, but also his best friend. So Benvolio, good guy. Benvolio's like super chill. He just wants everyone to get along. He's not really, too invested in like the fighting. He's just like, he's a lover, not a fighter, okay? Opposite of that is Tybalt. Tybalt is Juliet's cousin. He's like Romeo's the head of Montague. Tybalt's the head of Capulet. Juliet is a Capulet, but since she's a woman, us weak women can't be the head of anything. So Tybalt is like the new upcoming, the next Capulet, heir to the throne. He is like a hot-headed jerk. He is like, okay, some people might think he's cute because like he's so like confident and bossy, but he's really just like trying to always start shit talking mushrooms, and just like trying to like instigate stuff. So he comes in, as does Benvolio. Benvolio's going to try to stop the fight. Tybalt's going to try to keep the fight going. And if you remember, like you were saying in Romeo and Juliet, Tybalt was the same way, right? He was always trying to like start stuff. So Benvolio says, part fools, drawing his sword, put up your swords, you know not what you do. And Tybalt comes in with his sword. He's like, I'm ready, let's do this. What? Art thou drawn among these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death. And Benvolio says, I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword or manage it to part these men with me. I'm just trying to keep the peace. Either put your sword away or use your sword to help break up this fight. Gosh, like, do I have to tell you everything? Now, they're on opposing sides, but they both know that they're not supposed to fight. Remember, it's just like Bezos and Zuckerberg. They still can get in trouble by the police, They probably could pay him off too. But ultimately, if the governor comes in and is like, stop fighting, they have to listen. So it's the same way here. So what, art thou drawn among these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death. I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword or manage it to part these men with me. What, drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word, as I hate hell, all Montagues and thee. Have at thee, coward! And then they start fighting. He's like, what, you have your sword out, drawn, and talk of peace? The irony that you're holding a sword and talking of peace. I hate peace, just like I hate hell and Montagues and you. Let's do this, right? And then and you guys are doing so great. I'm about to show you the scene, so we're going to take a break on reading for a sec. So then they have all of these people coming in on both of their behalves. Enter 3 or 4 citizens with clubs and partisans. Clubs, builds, partisans, strike, beat them down with the Capulets, down with the Montagues. And then enter old Capulet in his gown and his wife. And he's like, kind of like just waking up, right? His gown, like his dressing gown. What noise is this? Give me my long sword, ho! and he's not calling his wife a hoe. I can see why you would think that. But I like to think maybe there's a double entendre there. But hoe just means like now. Like remember in Mary Poppins when they're like, tally-ho, tally-ho, tally-ho. So it's like hoe just means like right now. I know maybe Mary Poppins is too outdated now. So they are all coming in to fight. And now Capulet wants his long sword. And Lady Capulet says, a crutch, why you call for a sword? And then Montague and his wife come into the scene. My sword, I say, old Montague is come and flourishes his blade in spite of me. And then Montague sees him. Thou villain, Capulet, hold me not, let me go. And he's like trying to go, but he's so old. His wife's like, oh my God, don't go out there. Like, let the kids fight, just stay out of it. Hold me not, let me go. And Lady Montague, thou shalt not stir 1 foot to seek a foe. And then the prince comes in. And like I said, the prince is kind of like the governor. Like he is still the law of the land. And he comes in, and I think that I'm going to read this all the way through. Like I won't stop. Like this is kind of a sonnet. And I think you'll be surprised at how much you can understand. Rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighbor-stained steel. Will they not hear? What ho, you men, you beasts, that quench the fire of your precourteous rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins? On pain of torture from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground, and hear the sentence of your moved prince. 3 civil brawls bred of an airy word by thee, old Capulet, and Montague have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets, and made Verona's ancient citizens cast by their grave beseeming ornaments to wield old partisans in hands as old. Cankered with peace, to part your cankered hate. If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. For this time, all the rest depart away. You, Capulet, shall go along with me. Montague, come you this afternoon to know our further pleasure in this case to Old Freetown, our common judgment place. Once more, on pain of death, all men depart! And all but Montague and Lady Montague and Benvolio exit. And Montague asked Benvolio, who set this ancient quarrel new abroach? Speak, nephew, where were you by when it began? And Benvolio is trying to explain, just like wiping people. Oh, and I wanted to mention, I think that you could probably tell the prince, right? He was like, 3 times you've done this, 3 times you've pissed me off. If you do this again, you're going to be, put to death, basically on pain of death, all men depart. And, if ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. But I wanted to point out, look at the first 2 lines of that stanza where it says, rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighbor-stained steel. If you just skip through the lines and don't really stop and try to understand what's going on, you're going to miss a lot of the beautiful details. So neighbor-stained steel, what is he talking about? Sometimes you kind of have to stop and like yesterday's last class, which if you haven't watched the video, it's a 40-minute video. I look really weird because it was over COVID back when Ms. Beltran and I were teaching from home or from our classrooms, but on camera. Remember when it was hybrid? So it was 3 groups. Oh, you guys were in middle school, so it's probably different. But you guys got to watch that video. If you were here and you weren't paying attention, you got to watch that video. It has everything you need to understand how to read Shakespeare. But what I said with Shakespeare is it's 2 translations, right? First, you have to think of it starts with an L. What's the literal? Thank you. Oh my God, thank you so much for knowing that. So first you have to start with the literal, right? And then you have to think about what's the metaphor, if there is one, what's it saying? So neighbor, stained steel. Okay, steel, what are they using that's steel? Swords. What will stain a sword? Blood. Whose blood is it though? Oh man, I got neighbor on my sword. Oh, I got neighbor Bob on my sword again. Oh man, I got that old woman neighbor on my sword. Right? So it's saying that the neighbors are fighting neighbors, right? Profaners of this neighbor-stained steel. You don't need to know what profaners are. Maybe you know the word profanity. Maybe you know the word profane, right? Like a bad word, or something that's really what's the word for profane? Really, what's the word where the Supreme Court justice says, I don't know, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. Obscene, yeah. There's a Supreme Court justice who said, I can't define obscenity, but I know it when I see it. And it's kind of like profane, right? You really don't need to be able to define profane, but you kind of know what they're talking about when he's like profaners. Okay, profanity, you're using a bad word. It's a bad thing. So profaners of this neighbor-stained steel. You can just kind of picture like someone with blood all over their sword, like swearing a lot. And even if that's not literally what Shakespeare meant, it's close enough that you can understand it. Because, like I said, look, it actually, I didn't even know this. What would Beyonce do? WWBDD. To the left, right? And if you look, profaners of this neighbor-stained steel, line 84, it says, Alani, can you read the line 84 translation? I.e.
Wait.
For line 84, but on the right side.
There is no 84.
But on this side.
Oh.
And profaners steal, i.e.
106.
I have for Act 1, Scene 1, line 84. Profaners of this neighbor-stained steel. Do you have it, Trevor? What yours?
Oh, that's 85 for me.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay,
There's no 84 for me.
That's weird. I see. Because, no, I see what you're saying. So you have to, it's like they're invisible. And it's a good way to learn how to read the lines. So it's going to be at 85, and then it just skips it, and it goes to 90. And then it wants your brain to kind of count it in the middle, you know? So it's like you can't, so then it's like, if 85 is there, then one up would be 84. Then you go to the left, and you go on the left side of the page, and it will have what the translation is. So what's profaners of this neighbor-stained steel?
You who put weapons to degrading use by shedding your neighbor's blood.
Yay! And look, that's exactly what we figured out, right?
Killing your neighbors?
Yeah, you're killing your neighbors in a degrading way, right? In a way that's like bad for humanity, right? So do you see how we figured it out on our own, but I guess we also could have just looked to the left. Okay, so we're going to actually pause there since the prince just did his thing. I'm going to let you see that scene, and then we will keep reading.